Alright guys, in today's video we're working on a 2009 Chevrolet Cobalt LS, and what we're looking at here is the tail light has become an aquarium. So the owner has been telling me that after a heavy rainstorm you get this problem. It kind of eventually drains out, and I can see where it's probably draining out over here. Now, you know, the rain has stopped some time ago. And the point of this video is, well, what causes this and what can you do about it? So let's pop the trunk and let's get this tail light housing out of here, and let's go over what your options are to either replace or repair. All right, guys, with the trunk open, it's real easy to get off. You're going to need a 7mm socket. You're going to pull these two bolts off, and actually that guy looks kind of loose. Yep. Doesn't tighten. All right, so double repair. The nylon insert that holds the bolt has died with age. I'll show you how to replace that too. So hey, it's a two for video. Let's see if this one tightens up, but we'll replace it anyway. Might as well replace them in a pair. All right, so we got those two bolts off. With those two bolts off, we have to go inside now. We're going to need a 10mm deep socket. Now, hopefully you guys can see this. We're going to see if this shows up on the camera or not. So we've got our little nut that holds the cargo net. We're going to unscrew that first. That's holding one of the bolts for the tail light assembly. Right, this guy right here. And then with that out, you're going to grab this carpet, this kind of molded carpet cardboard. You're going to peel it back. Just like that. This is the one that had the cargo net, nylon nut on it, and this is the one that's got a regular 10mm nut. Put your deep socket on this one. You should just have to loosen it up a bit. You should be able to get it out with your hand. Right, just a little guy like that. Right, and with that, we come back over the tail light. And with those four things removed, you should be able to jiggle this guy loose. There we go. All right, so we can probably just disconnect it from this main harness. All right, so the first thing we're going to look at here, so what do you do with this, right? So it looks like it's dripping from down here. And so this is why the owner tells me that a week or so in the sun, this problem goes away. But a few days in the rain, it comes back. So what that tells us is it's leaking down here. This is okay. It's draining out. But there's probably a very similar leak somewhere on the top. So the first thing we want to do with the water still in it is we want to find out where it's coming in. So we're going to turn it upside down. And we're going to see, do we see it dripping there? There we go. So that's where the water's coming in. Because wherever the water's going out, is where the water's coming in. Right? Yeah, look at that. So it's pissing out big time there. So what happens is, if we put this back in for a second, what happens is, you see this seam is very close when this is all sitting up here, and so the water will wick in all along here. And you can in fact see this, right? Because this car hasn't been washed or anything, so there's like algae growing on here. This person's parked under a tree a lot, and so that's where it's wicking in. And what's happened is the sealing of the plastic around here is given out. All right, so what are your options? Well, first thing is, let's get the water out of here. You should be able to pour it out of one of these turn signal or backup light ports, maybe even on this side. It's probably better on this side. There we go. So you're going to need to dry it out if you want to reuse it. So we're going to take this harness out, because we're going to need to repair this harness too, right? Because this guy may have gotten liquid inside of any of these sockets, so they could be corroded. So we're going to have to work on that. Then we're going to have to wash this out. It might have some algae growing in it on the inside. There might be some you can see some blackness. There's some mold here, right? So you're going to have to be some cleaning work here with some chemicals to get this cleaned out. The options are as follows. Replace this whole unit in my hand with a new one from GM. If you want to go that route, I'll put links in the description of what that costs. The other option is get this from a salvage yard, pro tip, go right after a few thunderstorms, so you're not picking up the same problem. Just pop that in and you're done. If you get that, make sure you get it with the harness and you're completely done, because if you don't go with the harness, you're still going to have to repair yours and make sure there's no corrosion. The third option is what I'll show you as well. We'll clean up the harness and we'll reseal this plastic housing and we'll remount it. So let's get started. All right, guys, first off, let's replace these nylon nuts here. Otherwise, we won't be able to reattach the thing securely. Now, if this was my car, I would probably do more cleaning here. But this is not my car, so we're just going to do enough to do the repair. All right, so if we come around this side, you can see these kind of poke through, right? So just take a rubber-tipped hammer, and we're just going to try to poke them out like that. And if you come on this side, you can see after a couple of taps, they're going to come out. Right under the ground. Get the another one out. That's all they are. Okay, and we're going to replace these with some new GM ones. So this is a part 11561847. Pop a couple of these in there. So they've even got like a little gasket on them, right? And these little wings are what hold them onto the metal. And then when you put the fasteners in, they expand, and that's what will lock them in. So these are all in and ready to take our screws when we get ready to put this piece back on. All right, so if we're going to repair this, and by the way, just like the nuts that we needed to replace, make sure you don't lose these little rubber washers that go on here that keep this metal here from scratching up the paint on the inside. So we've got this one. The other one must still be stuck to the body, right? So we just want to go fetch that. When we go put this guy back on, we want to make sure we set them back in there. All right, so the harness first. Bulbs out. Why is this guy problem? Is he already rusted in there? Yep, this guy may have already rusted in there. Nope, just a tight fit. All right. So, WD-40, water displacing, Formula 40. That's what that stands for. We're going to let that soak in there. We're going to get a little bit of a file, and we're going to make sure we don't have any debris in any of these connectors. And we're going to put this all back on with some dielectric grease. But if we don't see any corrosion, this is the best we can do with the harness. So we'll let that sit. It's overcast now. I'm going to wait for a really sunny day and let it bake in the sun. Now let's move on to this guy. So you'll see tabs here, 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 here. Yeah, that's it. And that's what the factory used to glue this on. Now, 9 times out of 10, if you try to separate these, it'll break. Now, you can try a heat gun, and you can try a whole lot of patience, like what I'm showing here, and you can slowly work this off, right? That'll take a lot of man-hours of work, but it can be done. And eventually, since we already have a leak, we know that the glue is compromised. Or, alternatively, you know, personally what I would do is I would just put a new one on or a salvage yard replacement. But if you're strapped for cash, what you can do is you can work this a little bit, and we can work in this product, windshield and glass sealant. And what this is a very, it's not very thick, I guess. It's got a very thin consistency. And because of that thin consistency, we can work this in where we couldn't normally get a silicone sealant to go. So if we keep it on the very thin portion of the tube, right, we want to get a very thin hole there, right? What we can do after we've got everything clean and dry, we can come in with this material And it might look from this angle like just regular silicone. Let me tell you, I've used this product in some other situations. It'll ooze in here because it's got a very liquid consistency. And we really only have to seal the top and about halfway down the side to solve a problem like this. Right? You know, so if I'm working on somebody's car and they're like, yeah, Rand, I really can't afford to have you replace that taillight housing. I can't even afford the price you're telling me from the salvage yard. Then I'll say, well, let's try this. And it can work for a few years. So if you're just trying to get something through for a little while, it can be a perfect solution. All right, so we got the top. Now you see it's already oozed in here. Right, so we have this topped off. I'll show you again. Put this in here. We'll come back and that stuff will have oozed in. Now we're going to get the side and down about halfway. And it's very important. I don't know if you guys can see it if we zoom in super close here, but I'm actually working this into, and you can see it going up under the red. Right? I hope you guys can see that. I can see it. It's actually going up under the red lens. We're trying to push it in enough to do that. Now, I'm going to keep doing this. You know, you could go halfway. We're probably just going to go ahead and go the whole way because the other thing with this kind of product, once you open the tube, if you don't use it again, it'll go bad in a month or two anyway. So you might as well just use the whole thing while you're in here. But I'm not necessarily going to have you guys watch the whole thing. So we're going to keep going all the way around. And we get down here where it's dirty. We're going to clean it up some before we do that for good adhesion. If we come back up to the top, if we zoom in here, you see, guys, this stuff has already wicked in here. It's super, super thin consistency. And for a problem like this, that's what you want. So we're going to actually have to reapply it up here already because it has already oozed in there and filled in these crevices. And we want to keep doing that until it stops going in like that. And then what you want to do is you want to sit this out in the sun and let it bake to make sure this stuff's all good and dry. Give it a good, 12, 14 hour curing time and then remount it to the car. So let me go ahead and finish doing it all around and we'll let it cure up for about an hour or so and we'll show you how it's going. All right, guys, what we've done here is we've let this guy bake in the sun. We've started some of the cosmetics. I've taken some Meguiar's Plastics, which is a plastic buffing compound, and got some of the, dull haze off of there. So she's a lot more shiny now, which, we want. And we've let all this silicone set up. So the only thing we got left really is cleaning on the inside. But before we're going to do that, we're going to test our work. And it might sound counterintuitive, guys, but we're going to put water back in here again because that's the only way we're going to know if we were successful. So we didn't seal the bottom, so we expect it to still leak out the bottom a little bit. I'm going to put about as much in there as we saw with the rain. And we're going to roll it around on the top here. Now, some of that ran out of our turn signal hole, so let's put a little bit more in here. So we're going to have to get that run off. And so what we're looking at here is, remember yesterday, we had it just pissing out over here, right? And so the water's holding now. Well, if the water's held in like an aquarium, then the water's not going to get in and intrude. So we're just going to go along the whole top edge of the light here. And you just got to be careful on the edge, right? Because that little side marker lamp is very close to this. Yeah, see right there, I just tipped it a little bit too much. But we're looking to see there's no leaks. And there are no leaks, and that's what we want. And we'll go ahead and do this kind of a test along these side corners here as well. We'll make sure that's all good. And then we'll start the final cleaning, and then we'll reinstall it. And all we're going to do on the clean on the inside, we're going to swish clear water around on here. There shouldn't be too much debris because the only thing you had is water intrusion. But you might have, like we showed up here on the edge, you might have a little bit of a mold, maybe have some algae growing. What we'll do to get that is a very, very, very diluted amount of bleach in with the water a couple of times to kill that. Rinse it 2, 3, 4 times and then let it sit out in the sun again without any electrical connectors on the side. And I then sit it up in this direction here, and the sun will just evaporate all that out for you. Then you can also get in here with a paper towel and a long wooden chopstick and clean up any smudges that you might see. I haven't been able to see any smudges on this one. It's in pretty good shape other than what we have on this edge here. So a couple more cleaning steps and then we'll reinstall it. All right, guys, if we take another look at that wiring harness that we did, we don't really see any corrosion on these terminals, which is a good thing, right? Nice and shiny to the eye on each one of these. And all we used was the WD-40 to get the water to where we could get it evaporated just by letting this guy sit out in the sun for a few hours. But just in case we do have any corrosion, before we actually reuse it and put the dielectric grease on, I'm going to use another product I've got here called Pontiac G5. And what Pontiac does is it chemically attacks oxidation that may be occurring on these electrical connections. So even what you can't see, this guy is good for breaking that up and preventing any new from forming. So we'll let him dry up here, and then we'll dielectric and put our bulbs back in and get it connected back onto the tail light, right? So this little clip here, we got to make sure we snap back on to that rear prong on the back of the tail light before we reinstall everything. Reinstalling is just kind of reversing what we did to take it off. Make sure this snaps back on. These two are going to go through these two holes. So you're going to want to come in on the outside, make sure you got them lined up, and push it through. And you can put these guys back in. And since we put the new nuts on earlier, get the hole lined up. Yeah. They're going to be tighter to go in because they're new. Yeah, they're going to be a lot tighter to go in. I'll roll the torque value at the bottom and I'll torque these up later. But now we can go and make sure that our brake light, turn signal, and reverse lamp is working, and they should be. Like I said, I'll roll the torque value at the bottom, and we're done with this repair. I hope this helps you out, gave you some options. Again, links in the descriptions for different part numbers that you may want to grab the parts that I showed in this video. Remember to go inside. I'll put the torque for the 10mm nut that goes on the inside, and we'll refasten that, and make sure you put your carpet piece back in. But we're done, guys. If you got questions, leave a comment below, and I will try to help. If you've got any thoughts about how you might do this differently, I'd love to hear that as well. If this saved you some money, your time, or helped you solve a problem you've had for a while, take a moment to hit that like button. I'd really appreciate it. And as always, thanks for watching.